Leo Taxel. I had a question about the L rundown. Did you ever do them? They seem to be a bizarre labyrinth of questions about groups, churches, race, politics, etc. This part stood out to me. 34. Have you ever created a secret society? 35. Have you ever caused trouble as a member of a secret society? 36. Have you ever harmed a secret society? 37. Have you ever pledged your allegiance to a secret society? Why was Hubbard so obsessed with the idea of secret societies for these high-level services? Was it sheer paranoia, or were groups, not CIA, actually trying to get into Scientology, or is it something completely else that I'm missing? Hey Leo, thanks for the question. I never did do the L rundowns because they are the single most expensive thing you can do in Scientology. And I'm talking literally tens of thousands of dollars there's 3 of these L rundowns, and they're not on or part of the Bridge to Total Freedom. I mean, they're ancillary or auxiliary services. But the L's were these very special booster rundowns that were done to supercharge your Thetan abilities, and these were developed in the early 1970s on board the ship by Hubbard. And he originally meant for them to be done by executives, Scientology execs. Got these things first when he was training them back in the early 70s for Scientology organizations. And they were supposed to sort of, like an apple corer. They were just going to reach in to you as a Thetan and just sort of pull out the nasty, horrible, stuff in the middle. And so, of course, they have to do with wrongdoings, overts that you've committed, in the far distant past, and sort of unleashing your power by going in and finding suppression that's occurred in the far past and ripping it out of you. This is kind of the idea of these L rundowns. So I could probably do a whole thing on them, but I never really have because we don't really have the actual Hubbard issues. There's been a lot of stuff put together from memory by people who were trained on them. And that's what you find on the net about them. And it's all very interesting. And of course, there's stuff I looked into when I got out of Scientology, and going down the rabbit hole and reading about the OT levels. At the same time, I read about the L's because I wanted to know all about those things. And generally speaking, when I was in Scientology, they're highly confidential. But I did talk to a few people who had read some of the processes, and they just seem to be sort of these tricky, insightful kind of, look at things in a way you've never looked at them before sort of questions. And you just kind of go, oh, wow, that's really interesting. And it was funny how there was a phenomenon connected with the L's within the world of Scientology, which was that people couldn't remember them. It was the strangest thing. People could remember receiving them. They could remember going in session, having their auditing, and then coming out and feeling, whatever they felt about it. But they couldn't tell you. They said, I couldn't even tell you what was asked of me. I couldn't even tell you what happened in the session. And that always kind of bothered me. What is that supposed to mean? Because I could remember questions I was asked in auditing. So how is it people couldn't remember what was going on in these L's? And people would say, it was like being asked, what's on your nose? And you go, oh my God, I never thought about that before. And roar, and my whole world just blew up and I don't have a nose anymore. It was this sort of like, what? It just sounded strange. Even when I was in Scientology, it sounded weird. So as far as your question about secret societies, you've taken just a couple questions out of what are hundreds of questions that are asked on the L's, or at least from what I've seen. As far as secret societies and stuff go, I don't know that Hubbard was obsessed with secret societies. You might be putting a little bit too much into those questions. But Hubbard was obsessed with the idea that people were going to get something out of anything else except Scientology. And so the idea of what are called other practices or earlier practices or things that, yoga, transcendental meditation, est, anything else that people were doing, psychology and psychiatry even, were considered other practices and verboten, things that you were not supposed to be doing as Scientology, because Scientology ultimately presents itself to Scientologists as the one and only thing they need in their entire life. It is supposed to be an all-encompassing thing that really does take over your life. Hubbard said Scientology is the one thing that's senior to life because it includes or encompasses all of life. Okay, so if you think about that for a second, that's a pretty startling statement. It's senior to life. That is how he expected Scientologists to think about it. So, so secrets are things that you're not supposed to have in Scientology. As we've talked about, even a brief look into Scientology will show you that people are expected to confess and give over, the most intimate details of their life. And so you can't be a Scientologist and have something going on in your life that you can't tell Scientology about. This is also one of the reasons why they won't accept people who have, who work for the CIA, NSA, or any of the alphabet organizations. Nah, man, you can't be a Scientologist because there are things going on in your life you can't tell Scientology. They're not going to have that, right? Not at all. Hubbard demands total obedience and subservience to Scientology as an organization. So that's, I think, the best answer I can give you as to why there would be questions about secret societies, because there's going to be questions about anything in your life that is not Scientology that demands that you keep secrets. So, hope that helps.